Lao Tzu and the Twofold by Tian Kong Tran, Ph.D. Lao Tzu's thought is founded on the truth of the twofold. He sees a reality that is different from material. According to Chinese tradition, he calls that reality the way. It is possible to say that he sees the way as it has been seen before him. He wrote Tao Te Ching, Book of the Way, to express his meditations about the way. 1. There is the way. Is there the way? This is the most fundamental question. Lao Tzu sees the way and therefore there is the way. He sees it in a thing. 30 spokes converge upon one hub, but it is the center hole that is the use of the cart. We shape a lump of clay into a vessel, but it is the empty space within the vessel that is its use. We make doors and windows for a chamber, but it is the empty space within it that is its use. Thus, while the beings are profitable, the non-being is useful. So, the whole or the empty space or nothingness is the use of a thing. So, according to Lao Tzu, it is the use that makes a thing. The use of a chalice is to contain wine that is produced from earth and offered by mortal man to eternal God in heaven. The use is the way. Here a being denotes material, matter, or profit. So, profit denotes material, matter. In a thing there is material and nothingness. Nothing, and not material, constitutes a thing as thing. A chalice is composed of crystal and containing wine that is produced from earth and offered by mortal man to eternal God in heaven. It is the containing wine that is produced from earth and offered by mortal man to eternal God in heaven, and not crystal, that makes a thing. Nothingness is another name of the way. When the entire world recognizes beauty as beauty, there is ugliness. When the entire world recognizes good as good, there is evil. Indeed, nothing and being give birth to each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short exhibit each other. High and low set measure to each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Back and front follow each other. We know beauty and ugliness, good and evil, difficult and easy, long and short, high and low, voice and sound, back and front. So, if we know a being, material, we also must know nothingness, non-material. This is another way by which Lao Tzu wants to prove that there is nothingness. It seems that this provability is not very clear. Hidden in the deeps, yet it seems to exist forever. I do not know whose child it is. It is likely that it existed before God. Here it denotes the way. Lao Tzu does not know where the way comes from. Usually, people think that God is the creator that created all things, including the way. But according to Lao Tzu, it is likely that it existed before God. It seems to be so. In order that God can appear as God to man, there has to be the way in man. If man is without the way, he cannot see God. We have the feeling that an ant does not see God. The never-dying spirit of the cave is called the mysterious mother. The doorway of the mysterious mother is called the root of heaven and earth. Lingering like a veil barely seen, it has only a hint of existence, and yet it is inexhaustibly used. Lao Tzu calls the way the never-dying spirit of the cave and the mysterious mother. In Chinese thought, heaven and earth are images, symbols, and names of the way. Lao Tzu wants to talk about the origin of heaven and earth. Here, as well as in many other places of Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu considers that the way is something vague, probably non-existing, but it is the inexhaustible origin of all things. 2. The way, the origin of all things. Lao Tzu sees the way and material. So, the way or material, which one is the origin of a thing? For example, crystal and the way, which one makes the chalice? Or the body and the way, Which one constitutes Lao Tzu? Lao Tzu's reply is that it is the way, not material, that is the origin of a thing. He writes, "Nothing is the name of the origin of heaven and earth. Being is the name of the mother of all things." These sentences are very profound. Heaven and earth are usually considered two images of the way and the origin of all things. So Lao Tzu seeks the origin of the way and hence the origin of all things, and this origin is nothing. But if the way wants to be the mother of all things, it must appear as being. So, the way can be called nothing or being. Being here indicates the way, while being that has been mentioned above indicates material. So, it is the same name, but it has different meanings. We must understand it according to its place. The way gives birth to one. One gives birth to two. Two gives birth to three. Three gives birth to 10,000 things. All things carry the yin on their backs and embrace the yang in their arms. They are harmony with each other because of these two null ethers. Lao Tzu knows that the way gives birth to all things. However, the way appears as one, then two, and then three before it gives birth to all things. One can be the ultimate, two can be heaven and earth, three can be hardly determined, maybe heaven, earth, man, trinity. The yin and the yang are two images of the way. The yin is earth, and the yang is heaven. The words null ethers can cause the misunderstanding that the yin and the yang are two material ethers. The way gives birth to all things, virtue nourishes, matter shapes, environment perfects. Therefore, all things without exception revere the way and honor virtue, although they are not commanded, but left to do so naturally. Hence, the way gives birth, virtue nurses, grows, fosters, shelters, comforts, nourishes, and guards. Virtue is the way that man realizes. Man must realize the way in order that all things may live or appear. Matter and environment indicate the material sphere. So Lao Tzu sees two realities, the way and material, and he also sees that material is needed for the appearance of a thing. The way alone cannot make a thing. When material harbors the way, it becomes a thing. The great way is all-pervading, it can reach the right or the left. All things depend on it, and none is excluded. The way is the origin of all things, everything needs the way. 3. The difference in shape between the way and a material thing. Every day we see things and a thing appears in a seemingly clear light to us. We see a banyan tree standing on the roadside, a dog running in the yard, or a girl gathering flowers. We see their shape. However, regarding the way, it seems that we do not see its shape. Tao Te Ching begins. The way that can be talked about is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The way cannot be talked about and cannot be named. In the meantime, we can talk about a thing and can name it. So, in eternal nothing, we should look at the wonderfulness of the way. In eternal being, we should look at its outer aspects. These two flow from the same source, though differently named, and both are called mysteries. Mysterious and more mysterious. That is the door of all wonders. The way is always nameless. Lao Tzu sees that people call the way eternal nothing and eternal being. We call the way nothing because it is different from a thing. A thing is ordinary, and the way is wonderful. So, the name nothing expresses the wonderfulness of the way. We call the way being because we also want to describe a certain shape of the way. The way is not nothing understood as emptiness. Nothing and being both are names of the way. It is too hard to understand, too mysterious, too wonderful. Look at it but you cannot see it, its name is formless. Listen to it but you cannot hear it, its name is soundless. grasp it but you cannot get it, its name is incorporeal. These three attributes are unfathomable, therefore, they mingle into one. Its upper side is not bright, its underside is not dim. It continues endlessly, it is unknowable. Until it returns beyond the realm of things, it is called the formless form, the non-material image, it is called the vague. Confront it and you do not see its face. Follow it and you do not see its back. Music and dainty dishes make a passing guest pause. But being said in the words, the way is tasteless, flavorless, not seen, not heard, but it cannot be used up. Standing in front of the way, wanting to talk about it and to name it, Lao Tzu feels perplexed. The way is wonderful and mysterious. It is formless, soundless, incorporeal, and tasteless. Few words fit nature. Nature is used by Lao Tzu as a name of the way. It is possible that Lao Tzu sees that the way naturally exists. It was not born by anyone, because it existed before heaven and earth and even before God. And nature does not express itself in many words. It does its work, but it makes no claims for itself. It clothes and feeds all things, but it makes no claims to be their master. Because it does not have desire, it may be called the little. All things return to it as to their home, but it does not lord over them, thus, it may be called the great. It is hard to talk about the way, it is right to call it little and it is also right to call it great. Little talks about its shape and great talks about its use. The way makes all things and denies nothing, it gives birth to them but lays no claim to them, it does its work but does not say by its work, it accomplishes its work but does not dwell on things. It gives birth but does not claim as its own, it does but does not claim its doing, it grows but does not claim to be master. This is called hidden virtue. The way makes all things. But looking at them, we do not see the way. Lao Tzu uses the expressions it accomplishes its work but does not dwell on things and it grows but does not claim to be master to express the non-appearance of the way in things. Looking at things, we see material. For example, looking at the table in front of us, we see wood, we do not see the way in the table. But it is the way that makes the table. Therefore, Lao Tzu says that the way accomplishes its work but does not dwell in the table. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. It is hard to talk about the way. Therefore, he who knows does not speak. He who speaks a lot does not know. This is Lao Tzu's opinion. Some other sages speak a lot. It is possible that Lao Tzu sees that many persons speak a lot, but they speak about material while they think that they speak about the way. Hence, we must be very careful when we talk about the way. 4. Much of material, little of the way, and much of the way, little of material. In making a thing, for example a man, between material and the way, which one is more important? He who sees much of material sees little of the way, and he who sees little of material sees much of the way. Lao Tzu says, one who knows is not erudite, the erudite one does not know. He who knows that the way essentially constitutes a man does not need to know much about the body of a man. He who thinks that erudition of the body of a man is a knowledge of a man does not know. Today we have a lot of knowledge of this shore of man, but according to Lao Tzu that does not guarantee that we know a lot about man. One who knows is not erudite does not mean that he who knows the way must be a person who does not know much about this shore, but it means that he who knows the way knows that a good knowledge of this shore of man does not mean a good knowledge of man. The greatest perfection seems imperfect, yet its use is inexhaustible. The greatest fullness seems empty, yet its use is endless. The greatest straightness seems bent. The greatest skill appears clumsy. The greatest eloquence seems stammering. Active overcomes cold. Calmness overcomes heat. Tranquility is the norm of the world. The way is perfect, but it usually seems imperfect, because all things are not imperfect. The way is full, but it usually seems empty, because it is not as full as all things. The way is extremely straight, but it usually seems bent, because all things are straight. Talking about the way requires skill and eloquence, or caution, because it is hard to talk about the way, but it is considered clumsy and stammering by people. Lao Tzu describes the way as active and tranquil, while all things are cold and hot. In order to shrink it, it must first be stretched out. In order to weaken it, it must first be made strong. In order to throw down it, it must first be set on high. In order to obtain it, it must first be given. That is subtle and wise. The soft overcomes the hard. The weak overcomes the strong. The fish cannot leave the deep. This may be regarded as Lao Tzu's view of the history of the way. Firstly, material plays the dominant role. Then people see that material does not bring joy, happiness, and peace. They return to the way. First be stretched out, first be made strong, first be set on high, and first be given. Talk about material. But afterwards material is contracted, weakened, thrown away and robbed away. This is the manner by which people see the valuelessness of material. This manner is subtle and wise. At last, the way conquers material. Man cannot leave the way that is his origin. We hope that it is such. Sincere words are not beautiful, beautiful words are not sincere. Good men are not argumentative, the argumentative are not good. Beauty belongs to the material world and sincerity belongs to the way. Argumentativeness belongs to the material world and goodness belongs to the way. Without going out of your door, you are aware of the world. Without looking out of your window, you see the way of heaven. The farther one goes, the less one knows. Thus, the sage knows without going out, sees without looking, and achieves without doing. The way is within man. Going farther into the material world is to seek the way in the place where the way is not. The sage does not take to hoarding. The more he lives for others, the fuller is his life. The more he gives, the more he abounds. Ordinary people, because they base their life on profit, take to hoarding. The more they hoard, the better their life is. He who has attained the way wants to share it with others. The more he gives, the more he abounds. 5. The danger of the material world and the preciousness of the way. Lao Tzu, like other sages, sees that people attach themselves to the material world. It seems that they do not see the way. Of course, to the sages, because the way is the origin of all things, it is the way that is precious. Moreover, for the sages, the attachment to material brings with it a lot of bad things: lies, rivalry, thefts and robberies, sexual misconduct, war, and sorrow. The 5 colors blind the eye. The 5 tones deafen the ear. The 5 flavors cloy the palate. Racing and hunting madden the mind. Rare goods tempt men to do wrong. Therefore, the sage takes care of the belly, not the eye. He prefers what is within to what is without. Racing and hunting for the material world makes man become blind and deaf to the way. People live in ignorance, madness, and wrongdoing. You hold to fullness, and it is better to stop in time. You keep on beating and sharpening a sword, and the edge cannot be preserved for long. You fill your house with gold and jade, and it can no longer be guarded. You put on airs by your riches and honor, and you will only reap a crop of calamities. Here is the way of heaven. When you have done your work, retire. A lot of material has its own harm. Riches lure robbers. It is said that greed is unfathomable. When attaching themselves to material, people never feel full, and therefore, they always have bad schemes. The way is the sphere of peace and gratification. Therefore, people seek it. However, they are able not to seek it when it does not attract them. When the world is reigned by the way, the galloping horses are led to fertilize the fields with their droppings. When the world is wayless, war horses breed themselves on the suburbs. There is no greater calamity than not knowing enough. There is no greater evil than will gain. Therefore enough of knowing enough is constant enough. The way brings peace. Wise horses are not used for battlefields, but for rice fields. The no way brings war. Rice fields become pastures for horses. War comes from not knowing enough or greed. The material shore is the shore of greed. Only when reaching the shore of the way, people stop being greedy. He who holds the great image will attract all things to him. They flock to him and receive no harm, for in him they find peace, security, and happiness. The great image is another name of the way. Man, even if he likes to run after material, in his heart loves the way. He who holds the way attracts all things to him. Lao Tzu, Confucius, the Buddha, and Jesus attract people to them. In the remote past there were those who attained the One. Attaining the One, heaven is clear. Attaining the One, earth is calm. Attaining the One, God is holy. Attaining the One, the cave is full. Attaining the One, 10,000 creatures come into life. Attaining the One, kings and princes become sovereign rulers of the world. All of them are what they are by virtue of the One. If heaven were not clear, it would fall to pieces. If earth were not calm, it would quake. If God were not holy, he would cease from being. If the fountain were not full, it would dry up. If 10,000 creatures did not come to life, they would perish. If kings and princes were not supreme, they would stumble and fall. Due to the way, a thing is clear, calm, holy, full, living, ruling. Without the way, a thing is falling to pieces, quaking, ceasing to be, drying up, perishing, stumbling and falling. Because the way is the origin of a thing is in danger if it lost its origin. The world has its root. This root is the mother of the world. If you know the mother, you know her children. If you know the children, you should go back and hold on to the mother. In so doing, to the end of your days you will incur no risk. Block all the passages, shut all the doors, to the end of your days, you will not be worn out. Open the passages, multiply your activities, to the end of your days, you will remain helpless. To see the small is to have insight. To hold on to weakness is to be strong. To use the lights, to return to insight, not to bring calamities upon oneself, this is the way of cultivating the constant. Blocking all the passages and shutting all the doors are blocking all the passages and shutting all the doors of the material world. To teach people to attach themselves to the material world is to harm them. To understand the world, you must know its root. It seems that present education brings plenty of harm to the world. Man is becoming animal-like. Why did the ancients prize the way? Is it not because they said that by virtue of it he who seeks finds, and the guilty are forgiven? That is why it is such a treasure to the world. The ancients prized the way. Today do we prize it? Are we falling in danger? Attain to utmost emptiness. Cling single-heartedly to stillness. While all things are stirring together, I only contemplate the return, All things flourish, but each of them will return to its root. To return to the root is to be still, that is to return to one's destiny. To return to one's destiny is to return to the constant way. To know the constant way is called enlightenment. If one does not know the constant way, one is blind and runs into disasters. If one knows the constant way, one is all-embracing. If one is all-embracing, one is just. To be just is to be king. King is heaven. Heaven is the way. The way is eternal. It is save all life. Lao Tzu praises the way, it is enlightenment, all-embracing, just, king, heaven, safety. The no way is blind, dangerous. It blunts all sharp edges, it unties all tangles, it harmonizes all lights, it unites the worldly dusts. In the shore of material there is rivalry, each person is a sharp edge to others, there is disorder, everyone considers oneself light, even though everyone lives in darkness and worldly dusts. The way brings harmony. The man of the highest goodness is like water. Water knows how to benefit all things without striving with them. It stays in places loathed by all men. Therefore, it comes near the way. In choosing your dwelling, know how to keep to the earth. In cultivating your mind, know how to dive in the abyss. In dealing with others, know how to be in relation to benevolence. In speaking, know how to keep faithfulness. In controlling the affairs of the state, know how to maintain good governing. In working, know how to be suitable to ability. In acting, know how to be suitable to time. If you do not strive with others, you will be free from error. Lao Tzu calls a person who follows the way a man of highest goodness, in relation to benevolence and in accordance with faithfulness. The way appears so that a thing can appear in its essence, but the way hides itself, the way does not strive with things. A man of highest goodness does not strive with others. He is like water, water nourishes all things and does not strive with anything. But the way is what people try to stay far from. Out is life, in is death. 3 in 10 are followers of life. 3 in 10 are followers of death. 3 in 10 live as man but act in the realm of death. How is this? Because they all crave life. It is said that he who knows well how to live meets no tigers or rhinoceroses on his road and comes into the battlefield untouched by the weapons. For, in him, a rhinoceros would find no place for his horns, a tiger no place to lay his claws upon, and a weapon no place to lodge its point. How is this? Because there is no room for death in him. In summary, going out of the material world is true life. Entering into the material world is life as death. 6. Non-doing. Speaking about Lao Tzu is speaking about non-doing. But non-doing is difficult to understand. In the light of the truth of the twofold, non-doing becomes clear and distinct. Doing means doing on the shore of material or doing that is founded on the shore of material. And the shore of material harbors bad intentions, bad speeches, and bad actions. Lao Tzu advocates, exit out of the shore of material and reaching the other shore. That is the reason of the birth of Tao Te Ching. Out of the world is non-doing what can cause bad intentions, bad speeches, and bad actions. For example, do not exalt the talented, and the people cease from rivalry and contention. Do not prize goods hard to get, and the people cease from robbing and stealing. Do not display what is desirable, and the people's hearts remain undisturbed. Hence non-doing does not mean sitting still, non-doing on the shore of material but doing on the shore of the way. Making people see that the way is more important than material. Lao Tzu calls it doing non-doing. Doing non-doing is doing what people do not do. For example, therefore, the sage's way of governing is emptying the mind, filling the belly, weakening the will, toughening the bones. In this way he will cause the people to remain without knowledge and without desire and prevent the knowing ones from any doing. Doing non-doing, and everything will be in order. It is the doing on the shore of material that causes many things that cannot be governed, and it is the doing on the shore of the way that brings good government. Therefore, non-doing but not non-doing. The shore of material harbors greed of wealth and disturbance, and on the shore of the way the greed ceases to be and there is peace. The way does not do but does do, does not do nothing. If kings and princes can cling to it, all things will change by themselves. When they change and tend to stir, it is time to keep them in their place by the aid of the nameless uncarved. It is the uncarved that curbs the desires. Without desires, there will be stillness, the world will be in peace by itself. The way is above material. It seems that Lao Tzu is proud that he is the only man who knows the usefulness of non-doing. The softest in the world surpasses the hardest in the world. Only nothing can enter no space. Hence, I know the advantages of non-doing. The teaching of no word, the beneficial of non-doing, a very few in the world know. Learning or trying to understand the material world becomes more and more advanced. But to enter into the kingdom of the way, we have to give up plenty of doings on the shore of material until we do not have anything to do, non-doing on the shore of material but entering into the way or practicing the way and, hence doing non-doing. In order that it is easier to understand, non-doing on the shore of material has to be explained as non-doing the bad things of the shore of material. By learning, one advances day by day. By practicing the way, one reduces day by day. Reducing and reducing, until you reach the state of non-doing. Non-doing, and yet not doing. In summary, non-doing is: do non-doing. Carry out no work. Taste the tasteless. Make the small big. Make the little much. Render virtue to enmity. In non-doing we render virtue to enmity because in doing there is only the way and there is no enmity. 7. The sage. Who is a sage? A sage is a person who knows that the material shore is the shore of ignorance and the shore of the way is the shore of enlightenment. My words are very easy to understand, and very easy to practice. But the world cannot understand them, nor practice them. My words have a root. My deeds have a Lord. Because people are not aware of this, they do not understand me. Those who understand me are few, those who follow me are honored. Therefore, the sage wears coarse clothes, while keeping the jade in his bosom. Lao Tzu complained that his words were very easy to understand, and very easy to practice, but the world could not understand them, nor practice them. I think that it is so because Lao Tzu did not represent the truth of which he had intuition in the clear light of the twofold. Lao Tzu had intuition of the twofold, but people did not see it. I recall that when I was a student, my teachers taught the way as essence or substance of material things and of the material world. The way and material are but one, monism. However, in truth, the way is different from material. Therefore, the way is as precious as jade. Give up learning, and you will have no more worry. How great is the difference between yes and no? What is the distinction between good and evil? Must I fear what others fear? What abysmal nonsense this is! All men are joyous and beaming, as though feasting upon a sacrificial ox, as though mounting a spring terrace. I alone am placid and get no mark, like a babe that has not yet smiled. I alone am forlorn as one who has no home to return to. All men have more than enough. I alone appear to possess nothing. What a fool I am! What an obscure mind I have! All men are shining. I alone am dull. All men are sharp. I alone am blunt, rippling like the endless ocean, rambling like the ceaseless wind. All men have their things. I alone am stubborn and stupid. But wherein I am most different from others is in knowing to prize my nourishing mother. Lao Tzu describes the difference between a sage and an ordinary person. An ordinary person says yes to material and non to lack of material. Good is to have plenty of material and bad is to have a little of material. The learning that leads to this knowledge of good and bad should be given up. A sage does not have that kind of fear of an ordinary person. To a sage, the way is good, and material leads people to evil schemes. The sage has no heart of his own but takes the heart of the people as his own. He is good to the good, he is also good to the not good, for virtue is good. He is faithful to the faithful, he is also faithful to the unfaithful, for virtue is faithful. In the midst of the world, the sage recoils. For the sake of the world, he keeps his heart nebulous. All the people strain their ears and eyes, he treats them as innocent children. A sage cares for people, he takes the heart of the people as his own. The way, virtue, is good, it is good to the good and it is also good to the not good. The way is faithful, it is faithful to the faithful and it is also faithful to the unfaithful. How can a sage be good to the not good and faithful to the unfaithful? Because in the shore of the way there are only good and faithful. The sage does not take to hoarding. The more he lives for others, the fuller is his life. The more he gives, the more he abounds. The way of heaven benefits and does not harm. The way of the sage works and does not compete with anyone. On the shore of material, people take to hoarding, the more they hoard the fuller they are and hence rivalry occurs. But on the shore of the way, people give the way to others. The more of the way they give, the fuller they are and hence rivalry does not occur. Heaven lasts long, and earth abides long. What is the secret of their durability? Is it not because they do not live for themselves that they can live so long? Therefore, the sage wants to remain behind, but finds himself at the head of others, reckons himself out but finds himself safe and secure. Is it not because he is selfless that his self is realized? Heaven and earth make all things appear or live for all things while hiding themselves. But because of that, heaven and earth last long. In imitating heaven and earth, the sage takes care of the world while remaining behind. Because of that the sage is a sage. A. Governing by the way. The principle, doing is doing on the shore of material. What are the characteristics of doing on the shore of material? 1. The value of life is based on material, and 2. Then being afraid of people's greed, rules and regulations are imposed on them. But according to Lao Tzu, such governing will fail because when people attach themselves to material, it is impossible for them not to do evil. The principle, non-doing is not doing on the shore of material and doing on the shore of the way. What are the characteristics of this non-doing? 1. The value of life is not based on material, but it is based on the way, and 2. When people follow the way, they will not do unjust things. According to Lao Tzu, such governing will succeed. To do this non-doing, he who governs must know the way. If he does not know the way, how can he govern by the way? An ideal governor is a sage. The sage knows that it is necessary to educate people right at the beginning. What is fragile is easily broken. What is small is easily scattered. Deal with a thing before it occurs. Repair a thing before it is in disorder. A tree as big as a man's embrace springs from a tiny sprout. A 9-story tower begins with a basket of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles starts from where one stands. Plan the difficult when it is still easy. Accomplish the great when it is still small. Difficult things in the world can be achieved in what is easy. Big things in the world can be achieved in what is minute. Thus, the sage never does big things, yet by that he can achieve them. He who promises lightly must rarely fulfill it. He who thinks a thing easy will find it difficult. Therefore, the sage, who regards everything as difficult, meets with no difficulties in the end. And educating is educating people to live by the way, not by material profit. Doing is doing on the shore of material, and gripping is gripping material. Wanting what is not wanted is wanting the way, because people do not want the way, but they want material. Learning what is not learned is learning the way, because people do not learn the way, but they learn material. To do is to fail. To grip is to lose. Therefore, the sage does not do, and so does not fail, does not grip, and so does not lose. In handling affairs, people often fail just at the point of completion. Be as careful at the end as at the beginning, then there will be no failure. To win over the world, one must have no work. If one still has work, one will never be able to win over the world. Drop sagacity, abandon intellection, and the people will be benefited 100-fold. Drop benevolence, abandon righteousness, and the people will return to filial piety and paternal kindness. Drop shrewdness, abandon profit, and robbers and thieves will cease to be. These three, being external adornments, are not enough. Therefore, there must have something to which the people attach themselves: see the pure, embrace the unadorned, diminish the self and curb the desires. You govern a state by straightness. You engage in war by rare operations. It is by non-doing that you win the world. How do I know that this is so? By the fact it is so. The more restrictions and inhibitions there are in the world, the poorer the people become. The sharper the weapons the people possess, the more disordered the nation is. The more skills the people have, the stranger things happen. The more articulate the laws and rules, the more thieves and robbers there are. Therefore, the sage says, I do not do, and the people transform themselves. I love quietude, and the people become straight by themselves. I do not engage myself in anything, and the people grow rich by themselves. I have no desires, and the people return to simplicity. Where the government is dull, the people are simple. Where the government is sharp, the people are deceitful. In the old days, those who were well versed in the practice of the way did not try to make the people know, but rather to keep them in the state of simplicity. Why are the people hard to govern? Because they are clever. Therefore, he who governs his state with cleverness is its malefactor. He who governs his state without resorting to cleverness is its benefactor. To know these two principles is to possess a rule and a measure of governing. To know the rule and the measure is mysterious virtue. Deep and far-reaching is mysterious virtue. It leads all things to return to great harmony. How do the river and the sea become the king of all streams? Because they place themselves in low positions, they are the kings of all streams. Therefore, to reign over the people, one must use humble words. To wish to stand in front of the people, one must put oneself behind them. Therefore, the sage is above the people, and they do not feel the heaviness of his weight. He stands in front of them, they do not feel hurt. Therefore, the entire world is glad to adore him without getting tired of him. Just because he contends with nobody, nobody contends with him. When the people are not afraid of death, why scare them with the specter of death? If you could make the people always afraid of death, and when someone persisted in breaking the law, then we might arrest and execute him, and who would dare to break the law? Is not the great executor always there to kill? If we want to do the killing for the great executor, this is like to chop wood for a master carpenter. To chop wood for a master carpenter, we would be lucky indeed if we did not hurt our own hand. The people are starving. It is because those above them are taxing them too heavily. That is why they are starving. The people are hard to govern. It is because those above them have a lot of interference. That is why they are hard to govern. The people make light of death. It is because those above them live an extravagant life. That is why they make light of death. Only he who works not for life knows to value life. If only I had a slight wisdom, I should walk in the great way, and my only fear would be to stray from it. The great way is very smooth and straight, and yet the people prefer circuitous paths. Nowadays people like circuitous paths, even though these paths bring many evil crimes. The court is extremely elegant, but the fields are extremely weedy and wild, and the granaries are extremely empty. They wear gorgeous clothes, they carry sharp swords, they surfeit themselves with food and drink, they possess more riches than they can use. This is boastful robbery. And it is indeed against the way. If one knows the constant way, one is all-embracing. If one is all-embracing, one is just. To be just is to be king. King is heaven. Heaven is the way. The way is eternal. It is save all life.